The wind howled through the frozen night. Snow slapped against the thin fabric of the human's tent. Inside, Daniel sat with his blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Trying to keep warm, the fire he had built was small, only a flicker of light against the endless darkness. He thought he was alone in the wilderness, far away from towns, far away from trouble, but then he heard it. A sound that did not belong to the storm. At first it was faint, almost like the cry of an animal. Then it grew clearer. The sound of weak footsteps crunching in the snow. Daniel froze, his hand tightening on the old hunting knife beside him. The steps stopped just outside the tent. For a long moment there was only silence, broken only by the wind. Then a voice, fragile and shaking, whispered through the flap of the tent. Please, help." Daniel blinked, unsure if his ears had tricked him. No one should have been out here, not in this deadly cold. He slowly unzipped the tent flap and pushed it open. What he saw made his breath catch. A girl stood there shivering violently, her skin pale blue and covered in frost. Her hair, silver and tangled, clung to her face. Her clothes were torn, little more than rags that offered no warmth. Her eyes glowed faintly, not like human eyes, but like twin embers struggling to stay alive. She was not human. She was alien, fragile, and on the edge of collapse. Daniel's first instinct was to shut the flap and pretend he had seen nothing. But she swayed, stumbled, and almost fell into the snow. Her lips moved soundlessly before she whispered again, "Please, just warmth. Just for a moment." Against his better judgment, Daniel reached out and caught her arm. Her skin was ice cold to the touch. He pulled her inside, closing the flap quickly to block out the storm. The firelight cast trembling shadows across her face. She looked even weaker under the dim glow, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. "Sit," Daniel said firmly. Though his voice carried a hint of worry, she dropped down beside the fire. Hugging her knees tightly to her chest, the cloak she wore slipped slightly, revealing faint glowing marks along her shoulders. They pulsed like dim stars, fading and returning in rhythm with her shallow breathing. Daniel frowned, unsure what to make of it. He had seen aliens before, in cities and ports, but never like this. Never one so helpless, so fragile. This one looked more like a lost child than a stranger from the stars. He poured some water into a metal cup and held it over the flame. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the fire's crackle. When the water warmed, he handed it to her, her trembling hands wrapped around the cup, and she drank like it was life itself. Still, she did not speak her name. Still, she kept glancing at the tent flap as though afraid of what was outside. Daniel noticed how she flinched every time the wind howled. Something or someone was chasing her. He could feel it in the way her shoulders shook, in the way her glowing eyes darted in fear. Finally, he broke the silence. "You're lucky I didn't leave you out there," he muttered. "Who are you?" "What are you running from?" Her lips trembled, but she shook her head. Then in a whisper barely louder than the storm, she said, "They'll find me. They always find me." Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't know who they were, but he could see the terror in her face, the exhaustion in her body. This was no ordinary traveler caught in the cold. This was someone carrying secrets, someone being hunted. The firelight flickered, shadows crawling along the tent walls. Outside, the storm raged louder, as if hiding other footsteps beneath the wind. Daniel tightened his grip on his knife again. He had let her inside, but now he wondered, what had he just invited into his life? The alien girl raised her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze for the first time. Her lips curved into a fragile, almost broken smile. "Thank you, human," she whispered. "But you should not have helped me." And with those chilling words, silence fell again inside the tent, leaving Daniel more uneasy than ever before. The fire inside the tent flickered weakly, its glow throwing soft light across the alien girl's face. She sat curled close to it, shivering still, though the warmth had begun to reach her trembling body. Her glowing eyes reflected the flames like twin lanterns in the night. Daniel watched her silently, his mind torn between suspicion and pity. He placed another piece of wood on the fire, sparks leaping into the air. The girl's head jerked slightly at the sound, as if even the crackle of burning wood startled her. Her hands clutched her torn cloak tightly. Refusing to let it slip away, Daniel noticed how her knuckles were pale, almost bruised from the cold, yet it wasn't just the cold she was hiding from. He could feel it. "Drink more," Daniel said, sliding another cup of warmed water toward her. Her hands shook as she took it, sipping slowly, careful not to spill. For a long time, neither spoke. the storm outside roaring like a wild beast. Finally, Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "You need to tell me who you are, or I can't help you." The girl's glowing eyes lifted toward him, wide with fear. I cannot," she whispered, her voice breaking. "If I say it, they will come faster." Daniel frowned. "They?" he asked, his tone sharp. She didn't answer, only turned her gaze back to the fire. The orange glow lit up the faint lines of glowing marks beneath her cloak. Daniel realized she was not simply cold. Something about those markings pulsed like a heartbeat. And every time they flickered, her body tensed as if in pain. He softened his tone. "I'm not going to hurt you, stranger," he said. "I could have left you out there, but I didn't, remember?" The girl hesitated, her lips parting, but then she pressed them shut again. Her silence was louder than the storm itself. Daniel sighed, frustrated but unwilling to push harder. He tore a piece of bread from his small supply and handed it to her. She stared at it like it was the most precious thing she had ever seen. Then in seconds she ate it hungrily, her hands trembling as crumbs fell onto the blanket. When she finished, she bowed her head, her voice soft. "Thank you." For a moment Daniel thought maybe things would settle, but then the girl's body stiffened, her glowing marks flickering faster. Her head jerked toward the tent flap, eyes widening. Daniel froze, his hand reaching for his knife again. "What is it?" he asked, his heart quickening. Her answer was only 2 words, whispered like a curse. "They're close." The wind outside howled louder, but beneath it Daniel thought he heard something else. A low hum, mechanical and strange. Cutting through the storm, the girl's breath came faster, her chest rising and falling. She pressed herself closer to the fire. As if the flames were her only shield, Daniel clenched his jaw, his instincts screaming that trouble was coming. He needed answers. But she only whispered broken fragments. "They hunt me. They never stop. Please don't open the tent, don't let them see me." Daniel stared at her trembling figure, confusion gnawing at him. Why was this weak, half-frozen girl so important? Why would anyone hunt her through a storm like this? The fire crackled again, and Daniel noticed her hand slip slightly from her cloak. For a second, he saw more of the glowing marks, circles and lines etched into her skin like living patterns. They pulsed with light, faint but alive. As if carrying energy he didn't understand, Daniel's breath caught. She was no ordinary alien refugee, she was something else. Something valuable, maybe dangerous. "You can't stay here forever," Daniel said quietly. "Whoever's after you, they won't stop." Her eyes snapped up to him, tears shimmering in their glow. "I know," she whispered, "but I had no choice. If I stop moving, I die. If they find me, I die. And now you?" She trailed off, as if realizing too late what danger she had dragged him into. Daniel leaned back, his hand resting on his rifle this time. He had survived storms, hunger, even raiders once, but now he wondered if he had just stepped into something much bigger. The girl looked down again, her voice fragile. "Human," she whispered, "why did you help me? You should have left me to the cold." Daniel didn't have an answer, not one he could explain even to himself. All he knew was that when he saw her trembling in the snow, something inside him refused to walk away. He muttered the only truth he had, "Because leaving you there felt wrong." For the first time, she smiled, faint and tired, but before Daniel could feel comfort in it, the sound outside grew louder. The humming turned into a deep thrum, vibrating through the frozen ground. The shadows of strange figures stretched across the tent wall, moving closer step by step. The alien girl clutched Daniel's sleeve with a desperate grip, her whisper breaking like glass. "They found me." And in that chilling moment, the fire inside the tent seemed far too small to protect them both from what was coming. The storm outside raged like a beast, the wind slamming against the thin fabric of the tent. The fire inside flickered nervously as though it too could sense the danger. Daniel's hand tightened around his rifle, his breath slow, steady, ready beside him. The alien girl trembled, her glowing eyes locked on the moving shadows creeping across the tent wall. The sound was clearer now. Heavy footsteps crunching in the snow, followed by a low mechanical hum. It was not the storm, not an illusion of the night. Someone or something was out there searching. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to stay silent, to keep the girl hidden, but silence felt like waiting for death. The girl's grip on his arm tightened until it hurt. "They are here," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They never stop. They can smell me, even through the storm." Her words chilled Daniel more than the freezing wind ever could. He leaned closer, whispering sharply, "Who are they? What do they want with you?" Her lips trembled, her eyes darting toward the flap of the tent. "They are hunters," she said at last. "Sent by those who made me. They will not leave without me." Daniel swallowed hard, his gaze shifting to the glowing marks pulsing faintly on her skin. He wanted to ask more. What did she mean, made me? But there was no time outside. A deep growl echoed through the storm. Unnatural, metallic. The tent's thin walls shook with the vibration of it. The girl pressed closer to the fire. As if the flames were her only shield, Daniel's mind raced. He had no allies, no reinforcements, just himself, his rifle, and a frightened stranger who carried secrets too heavy for her small frame. The storm had turned into a cage, trapping them both inside then. The sound of sniffing like hounds dragging air through mechanical lungs. Shadows moved faster across the fabric. Circling the tent, Daniel aimed his rifle at the flap. Sweat breaking across his forehead despite the cold. The girl buried her face into her arms, whispering broken words, "Don't let them take me. Please, human. Don't let them take me." Daniel had never considered himself a hero. He was a wanderer, a survivor, a man who only wanted peace away from crowded worlds. But now peace felt like a distant dream. The moment he had opened that flap and pulled her inside, his fate had changed and hers was now tied to his. Suddenly silence, the storm still raged. But the footsteps stopped. Daniel held his breath, waiting. Then a claw tore through the side of the tent, slashing the fabric like paper. A long metallic limb reached in, searching blindly for prey. The girl screamed, the glowing marks on her body flaring brighter. Daniel fired, the gunshot deafening inside the small space. The metallic arm jerked back, sparks flying where the bullet struck. Outside, a guttural roar shook the night. Furious and hungry, Daniel scrambled to his feet, reloading quickly. The girl clutched his sleeve, her glowing eyes wide. "You can't fight them," she cried. "They are too many." "Then we die trying," Daniel growled, his voice hard. He had no idea why he was ready to risk his life for her. Maybe it was the fear in her voice, or maybe it was the look in her eyes, something too human to ignore. The tent shook violently as another claw tore into it. The fire sputtered, casting wild shadows. Daniel pulled the girl behind him, aiming again. But before he could shoot, the girl pressed her hand against his back. Her glowing marks pulsed, and for a moment he felt something strange. A surge of warmth like energy flowing into him. He spun around to face her, eyes wide. "What did you just do?" Her lips trembled. I shared it. Just a little. So you can fight." Daniel had no idea what she meant, but he could feel it. His muscles felt stronger, his senses sharper. It was as if the storm had dulled, and the night itself had slowed around him. Outside, the hunter snarled. Circling again through the ripped fabric, Daniel caught a glimpse at last. Tall, thin creatures with mechanical limbs fused into their bodies, glowing red eyes piercing the snow. They looked less like living beings and more like weapons given flesh. Each step they took rattled the frozen ground. Daniel raised his rifle, his voice steady. "Stay behind me," he ordered. The girl obeyed, but her glowing hand still clung to him, feeding him strength he did not understand. The hunters growled again, moving closer, and Daniel realized this storm was no longer just about survival. It was a war creeping toward him step by step. The tent's walls sagged under the pressure of the wind and claws. The fire hissed, struggling to stay alive. And Daniel knew deep inside the real storm had only just begun. The girl whispered one final warning, her voice trembling but clear. "If they take me, the galaxy will burn." Daniel's chest tightened, his finger hovering on the trigger. He didn't understand her words, not fully. But he understood one thing. He could not let them have her. Outside, the shadows loomed larger, circling like wolves around a cornered prey inside. Daniel's rifle gleamed in the firelight, ready to speak, and as the hunters closed in, the storm howled louder than ever. The night had become a battlefield of silence and storm. Daniel stood with his rifle raised, every muscle tense. The alien girl pressed close behind him, her glowing marks casting a faint light that danced with the fire's dying flames. Outside, the hunters circled, their red eyes glowing like coals in the snow. The tent was torn in two places, the fabric flapping violently in the wind. Daniel knew it wouldn't hold for long. The fire sputtered low, threatening to die, leaving them in complete darkness. He could hear the hunters breathing, mechanical and harsh, as though their lungs were made of gears. The sound chilled him to the bone. One of the creatures moved closer, its claw dragging across the torn fabric. The girl whimpered, clutching Daniel's arm. He whispered quickly without taking his eyes from the flap. "If you don't tell me what they want, I can't protect you." She shook her head, her lips pale and trembling. "You shouldn't know," she whispered. "It will put you in more danger." Daniel turned slightly, his eyes fierce. "Danger is already here," he said. "You're in my tent, in my storm, and they want you? If I'm already standing in their way, I deserve to know why." The girl hesitated, her glowing eyes wet with tears. For a moment, Daniel thought she would stay silent, but then the tent shook again, and fear broke her last wall of silence. She whispered the words as if confessing a sin. "I was made in a lab." Daniel blinked, confused. "Made?" he asked. "Yes," she breathed. "Not born, created. Their experiment." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to continue. "They wanted soldiers, perfect weapons, living machines with power flowing through their blood. I was one of them, but I escaped before they could break me." Daniel's heart pounded. The glowing marks on her body, he suddenly understood. They weren't tattoos or natural patterns. They were something engineered, designed, maybe even dangerous. "You're saying you're one of their projects?" he asked carefully. She nodded slowly, the firelight glimmering in her tears. "I was supposed to be destroyed. They said I was too weak, useless, but I ran, and now they want me back to finish what they started." The storm outside seemed to roar louder. As if echoing her words, Daniel clenched his jaw, his grip on the rifle tightening. He had dragged wounded soldiers from battlefields before. He had seen eyes filled with the same fear, the fear of being hunted with no escape. But this was different. This was not war. This was cruelty wrapped in science, the girl continued, her words spilling faster now. "They never stop. They track the light inside me. That is why I keep running, why I hide. But I cannot run forever." Daniel felt her trembling against his arm. She looked so fragile, so small compared to the storm outside. Yet inside her body burned a secret power, one worth chasing across frozen lands. He lowered his rifle slightly, his voice softer now. "Why here? Why my tent?" Her lips parted, her voice so faint he almost didn't hear it. "Because you felt safe. When I saw you through the storm, I felt something I never felt before. Not fear, not hunger, not commands. Just safety." Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't know how or why, but he believed her still. The danger outside grew thicker by the second. The hunters scraped their claws against the snow, impatient, waiting. He raised his rifle again, eyes hardening. "You said you escaped," Daniel muttered. "What do they want now? To kill you?" The girl shook her head, tears falling. "No. Worse, they want to take me back, tear me open. Use my light to build more weapons. If they succeed, the galaxy will bleed. That's why they cannot have me. That's why I would rather die in this storm than return." Her words hit Daniel like a strike to the chest. He looked at her glowing marks, at her shivering body. She was not just a lost girl, not just a stranger begging for warmth. She was the key to something much larger, something too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. The tent shook violently again, claws ripping deeper into the fabric. Daniel snapped his rifle into position, ready to fire. The girl's glowing hand pressed against his back once more. The warmth flowed into him again, filling his arms with strength. He turned sharply, his voice low and urgent. "What are you doing to me?" Her eyes glistened in the firelight. "I share my energy. Not much. Only enough so you can stand against them. But it will burn you if I give too much." Daniel didn't know what to say. All he knew was the strength surging through him was not natural. It made his rifle feel lighter, his fear dimmer. The storm seemed less heavy, and yet the danger more real than ever. Outside, the hunters snarled, their red eyes glowing brighter. Daniel knew the tent would not last much longer. He glanced at the girl. She was terrified, broken but still alive, still clinging to hope. And he realized something that shocked even himself. He would not let them take her. Not while he still breathed. The girl saw the fire in his eyes and whispered, "You are not like them. Not like the ones who made me. If you stand with me, I will trust you." "Human," the storm screamed. The tent walls tore wider. A metallic face pressed through the rip. Glowing eyes staring inside, Daniel raised his rifle, his voice steady as steel. "Then trust me now, because they're about to find out we won't go quietly." And with those words, The storm carried the first clash of man and machine, the hunters breaking in, the fire blazing brighter. And the truth of what the girl carried burned between them like a secret too powerful to ignore. The tent walls collapsed inward as the first hunter forced its way through. Metal claws tore the fabric apart like it was paper. The storm roared in behind it, snow and wind whipping through the small space. Daniel's fire sputtered and nearly died, leaving the room lit only by the hunter's glowing red eyes. The alien girl screamed, her glowing marks flaring bright. Daniel raised his rifle and fired, the shot echoing like thunder in the storm. The bullet struck the hunter's chest, sparks flying as the creature staggered back. But it didn't fall, it roared, a sound half mechanical, half living, and lunged again. Daniel grabbed the girl and pushed her toward the back of the tent. "Stay down," he barked. Then he swung his rifle up again, firing another round into the creature's head. This time the shot cracked through its red eye. The hunter fell sideways into the snow, its metal limbs twitching like broken wires. But there were more. 3 more shadows loomed outside, their claws scraping against the frozen ground. Daniel's heart raced, his hands moving fast as he reloaded. The girl crawled closer, her glowing hands shaking. "You can't fight them all," she whispered, terror in her voice. "They will keep coming until you're dead." Daniel glanced at her, his jaw tight. "Then we don't give them the chance," he said. The second hunter crashed through the tent. Taller and heavier than the first, its eyes scanned the space, locking onto the girl instantly with a mechanical hiss. It raised its claws, ready to strike. Daniel fired again. But the shot only dented the creature's armor. It roared and swung its claw, tearing through his blanket and slicing the ground inches from his boots. Daniel rolled aside, the storm's cold biting at his skin. He raised the rifle, but the hunter moved too fast. Its claw swept forward again, knocking the weapon from his hands. The girl screamed and grabbed Daniel's arm, pulling him back just as the claw struck where he had been standing. The blow shattered his lantern, plunging them into near darkness. Only the glow of her marks and the red eyes of the hunters lit the night now. Daniel's breath came heavy, his fists clenched. He had no rifle, only his knife strapped to his belt. The third hunter pushed through the torn fabric. Snarling, Daniel drew his knife, gripping it tight. The girl pressed both her glowing hands to his back. The warmth surged again, his muscles tightened, his heartbeat steadied. For a moment, Daniel felt stronger than he had in years. He charged, knife flashing. The blade sank into the second hunter's joint where its metal met flesh. The creature shrieked, sparks flying as it staggered. Daniel yanked the knife free and slashed again. This time across its throat, the hunter fell, hissing as its red eyes dimmed. But the third one was already inside, its glowing sensors scanning the room. It ignored Daniel at first, focusing only on the girl. It stepped toward her, claws outstretched. The girl froze, paralyzed in fear. Daniel leapt between them. His knife raised, the hunter swung a claw. Knocking him off balance, Daniel hit the ground hard, the knife slipping from his hand. The girl cried out, her glowing marks blazing brighter than before. Her hands stretched toward the creature, and for the first time Daniel saw what she carried inside her. A wave of light burst from her body, a pulse like a heartbeat slamming into the hunter. The machine-like monster screeched, its red eyes flickering violently. It stumbled back, smoke rising from its chest. Daniel's jaw dropped. She had power, not just strength to share, but a weapon of her own. The girl collapsed to her knees, weak and trembling, her glow fading again. "I can't." "Do it again," she gasped. Daniel grabbed his knife, charging forward. He plunged the blade deep into the staggering hunter's chest, forcing it down into the snow. With a final hiss, it went still. The storm raged around them, but for a moment, silence fell inside the ruined tent. 3 hunters lay dead, sparks flickering from their broken bodies. Daniel's chest heaved, his hands shaking from the fight. The girl slumped forward, her head bowed. "You shouldn't have helped me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They will send more." "They always do." Daniel looked at her, his jaw tight. "Then let them come," he said. "You're not going back with them." Her glowing eyes lifted slowly to meet his. Tears slid down her face, freezing in the cold. "No one has ever said that before," she whispered. Daniel opened his mouth to answer, but the sound of engines cut him off, deep heavy, shaking the ground through the storm. He saw a massive shadow descending. An alien ship. Lowering itself into the valley, the girl gasped in horror, her glowing marks flickering weakly. "They've brought the carrier," she said. Daniel stared at the massive silhouette. its lights cutting through the blizzard. More hunters were coming, more than he could ever fight with bullets and knives. The fire inside the tent was dead now, only embers remained. But Daniel's resolve burned hotter than ever. He looked at the girl and spoke firmly. "If you want to survive this, you'll have to trust me completely." Her hands trembled as she reached out and took his. "I already do," she whispered, and above them the ship's engines roared. Drowning out the storm, the night's battle had only just begun. The storm shook the valley. But the sound of the alien ship was louder. Engines rumbled like thunder, lights cutting through the night as the massive carrier descended. The snow swirled under its shadow, turning the ground into a blinding white storm of ice. Daniel stared at it with narrowed eyes, his rifle clutched tightly in his hands. Beside him, the alien girl trembled, her glowing marks dim and flickering. She had spent too much energy already, too much power in the last fight. Her face was pale, her breaths uneven. "They brought the carrier," she whispered. "I cannot run anymore." Daniel turned sharply to her, his voice steady but firm. "You're not going back with them." She shook her head, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "You don't understand. If they take me, they won't just kill me, they'll use me. They will tear the power out of me, and with it, they will build weapons that no world can stop." Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen war before. He had seen men die under the weight of machines. But what she described was worse. An endless army powered by the light inside her. He crouched in front of her, gripping her shoulders firmly. "Then we stop them," he said, "together." Her eyes widened, glowing faintly in the dark. "Together?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel nodded, his jaw hard. "I don't care what they made you for right now. You're not their weapon, you're under my protection." For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the storm and the engines above. The girl's lips trembled, then curved into the faintest, most fragile smile. "No one has ever said that to me," she whispered. Her hands shook as she reached for his. When her glowing fingers touched his skin, a warmth spread through him again. Stronger this time, the marks along her arms flared, and Daniel felt his strength sharpen once more. But she looked into his eyes with fear. "Sharing too much will burn you from inside," she whispered. Daniel only squeezed her hand. "Then let it burn. I won't leave you." The carrier's engines grew louder as it landed in the snow-filled valley. The ground shook as ramps extended, and more hunters poured out, dozens of them, their glowing red eyes cutting through the blizzard. Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened. He knew he couldn't fight them all, not with bullets alone. But he also knew he couldn't surrender her. The girl clutched his sleeve, her voice trembling. "Human, why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Daniel looked at her, his expression hard but calm. "I don't need to know everything. I just know leaving you would make me less human." Her eyes shimmered, tears freezing on her cheeks. Slowly, she leaned closer, whispering, "Then I choose you, Daniel, even if it kills us both." The hunters spread across the valley, their footsteps shaking the frozen ground. Their leader emerged from the carrier, a towering figure of metal and flesh fused together. Its voice carried through the storm, deep and cold. "Return the experiment, human, and you may live." Daniel stood in the ripped remains of his tent. The girl beside him. He raised his rifle, his voice firm. "She's not yours." The leader tilted its head, glowing eyes narrowing. "You cannot protect her. You are one man against 100. Daniel's lips tightened into a thin smile. "Then let's see how far one man can go." The girl's glowing marks pulsed faster, her strength flowing into him. He felt the warmth surge through his body, his hands steady, his breath calm, but this time, he realized something different. She wasn't just giving him power. She was binding something deeper, a connection forming between them. A choice made not by accident but by trust. The hunters began to advance, their red eyes fixed on the girl. She pressed closer to Daniel, whispering, "If they take me, the galaxy will bleed. But if I stay with you, maybe there is hope." Daniel lowered his rifle for a second. Turning to look at her, his voice softened, though the storm howled around them. "Then stay with me no matter what happens, don't look back. Don't give up." The girl nodded slowly, her glowing marks flaring bright once more. She closed her eyes and pressed her forehead against his arm. Whispering, "I trust you," the storm howled. The hunters marched forward, and Daniel, with fire in his chest and the girl's light in his veins, lifted his rifle. He was no longer just fighting for himself. He was fighting for her, for the trust she had given him. The leader of the hunters raised its claw, signaling the attack, the valley filled with their screeches, their red eyes burning brighter. And in that frozen night, Daniel made his choice clear. He would not surrender her, not now, not ever. The snow whipped around them like blades, the ground trembling with the army's advance, and Daniel whispered to himself, "They'll have to kill me first." The alien girl's glowing marks pulsed one last time, brighter than before, and together they faced the storm of enemies. Standing side by side in the blizzard, the valley shook under the weight of the hunter army. Dozens of red eyes glowed in the blizzard, closing in on Daniel and the alien girl. The storm screamed like a living beast, whipping snow around them until the ground itself seemed to vanish. Above them, the carrier ship loomed like a predator, its engines vibrating through the frozen earth. Daniel gripped his rifle tight, his breath fogging in the cold air. The alien girl stood beside him, her glowing marks flaring weakly. She had given too much already, yet she pressed closer to him, refusing to let go. "They will not stop," she whispered. "No matter how many you kill, they will keep coming." Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice low but steady. "Then we give them something they can't handle." The girl's glowing eyes lifted to him, confused and afraid. "What do you mean?" Daniel didn't answer, not yet. The hunters moved as one, their claws digging into the snow. The leader raised its massive arm, signaling the strike. The storm filled with their mechanical screeches, their steps pounding like war drums. Daniel lifted his rifle and fired, the first shot tearing through the night. One hunter dropped, but the others pressed forward. Unstoppable, the girl clutched his arm, her voice breaking. "There are too many, human. You cannot fight them all." Daniel glanced at her, his eyes sharp. "Then tell me, what can you do that you're afraid to use?" Her lips trembled, her glowing marks flickering wildly. I can release all of it," she whispered. "The energy inside me, but if I do, it will destroy everything, even me." Daniel's chest tightened, the weight of her words heavy as stone. He saw the truth in her eyes. Her power was not just light, it was fire waiting to burn the world. The hunters charged, snow flying with each step. Daniel had seconds to choose. He grabbed her shoulders, his voice fierce. "Then don't do it alone." Her eyes widened, glowing brighter. "You don't understand. If I bind it to you, it will mark you forever. Your life will never be the same." Daniel's voice was steady. Without hesitation, "I don't care. If it keeps you alive. If it stops them, then do it." For a moment, the storm itself seemed to pause. The girl stared at him, trembling, then slowly raised her glowing hands. She pressed them against his chest, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Then you are my choice." A surge of light burst from her body, flowing into him like fire and thunder. Daniel gasped as the warmth spread through every muscle. Every vein, the glowing marks leapt from her skin onto his, spreading across his arms and chest like living patterns of light. The storm around them seemed to bow, snow whipping away in a wide circle. The hunters stopped for a heartbeat, their red eyes flickering in shock. Daniel stood taller, his body filled with power not his own. He felt stronger, faster, more alive than ever. The girl stumbled but held on to him, her eyes glowing faintly. "You are bound now," she whispered, "my protector, my chosen one." The hunters roared and charged again. But this time Daniel met them head-on. He fired his rifle with speed that defied reason, every shot tearing through their armor. When the rifle emptied, he threw it aside and fought with his knife. The glowing marks on his arms flared with every strike, his blade cutting through steel as if it were cloth. The storm itself seemed to fight with him, the wind whipping at his back. The girl watched, her weak body trembling, yet her glowing marks pulsed in rhythm with his. She was no longer alone. Her power lived inside him now, together. They cut through the hunters like fire through dry grass. One by one they fell, their red eyes dimming in the snow. But the leader still stood, towering above them, its claws dripping with sparks. It stepped forward, its voice booming through the storm. "You cannot change her fate, human. She was made to be ours. Your bond will only kill you both." Daniel wiped blood from his face, his glowing arms steady. "Then we die free," he growled. The leader lunged, its massive claw striking down. Daniel caught it with his bare hand. The light from the girl's bond surged through him, and with a roar he forced the claw back. Then he drove his knife deep into the leader's chest, the glowing marks on his body flaring like a star. The creature screeched, its body sparking and collapsing into the snow. Silence fell, broken only by the storm's howl. The hunters who remained froze, their red eyes dimming. They looked at Daniel, then at the girl, and for the first time they stepped back. Fear, not command, moved them now. Daniel stood over the fallen leader. His chest heaving, the girl stumbled toward him, her glowing marks fading, but her eyes filled with awe. You carry it now," she whispered. "They will never touch you. Or me." Daniel looked at her, his voice soft but firm. "Then they'll have to live with it because you're not theirs anymore." The storm began to calm, the snow falling lighter, the carrier ship retreating slowly into the clouds. The hunters withdrew, vanishing into the white night. Daniel and the girl stood alone in the ruined valley, surrounded by silence and death. But something new burned between them, trust, unbreakable and alive. The girl placed her trembling hand on his chest, feeling the glowing mark still pulsing faintly there. "You are bound to me now, human," she whispered. "And the galaxy will never be the same." Daniel said nothing. His breath heavy, his mind racing for the first time. He realized the truth. One choice, one act of trust, had just changed the fate of worlds, and as the storm faded into the night, he finally whispered back, "Then let them be afraid.